Happy President's Week. The kids are out of school, most of them. People that may have the day off, but we're celebrating the birthday of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. So I found this article which I thought would be great as we're celebrating President's Week and also thinking about financial independence, right? This article is from Kiplinger.com, the financial magazine. And the article is Financial Advice from America's Founding Fathers, right? What money management guidance can we glean from the words and experience of Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and more? It was written by Sarah Smith. She's an intern at Kiplinger.com, and I thought she did a great job. She's a senior at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, and she served as the news editor of the Flat Hat, which is their newspaper. So let's go into this and see what we can glean. Obviously, this is a famous image of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So this is Sarah Smith, who wrote this wonderful article. So a lot of things we can glean from this, right? So lots of things we can glean from this. One of the things, as I was reading the article, that I thought would be important to share was that there's some foundational principles that doesn't change. And that's solid that you can hold on to. So let's quickly go through it. So Benjamin Franklin famously coined the phrase, "A penny saved is a penny earned." That's a good start. Okay? That's a good start. So this is John Adams. So this is an image of John Adams. Let's see what kind of information we can learn from him on the importance of a financial education. All the perplexities, confusion, and distress in America arise not from the defects of the Constitution, not from want of honor or virtue, so much as from downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation. From a letter he writes, this comes from a letter to Thomas Jefferson in 1787. So basically, what are you talking about? From a defect or downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation. You're talking about financial literacy, right? Coin is basically money. Credit, right? We deal with credit now. And circulation, how the money circulate, how interest rates work, right? So he's talking about financial literacy. Even now, this was written in 1787 and hundreds of years later, because people don't know how credit works, how debt works, how money works. They're still in financial problems. So we have to get a financial education. It was true in 1787, and it is still true now. Okay, let's continue. Thomas Jefferson. Let's see what we can learn from him on the recipe for debt. Never spend your money before you have earned it. Basic advice. Solid advice. Never spend your money before you've earned it. That's what we do. Never spend your money before you have earned it. From a letter Jefferson wrote to his granddaughter outlining 12 canons of conduct in life from 1811. That advice was given more than 200 years ago. Never spend your money before you have earned it. But now we see people doing it now. What do you think credit card debt is? It's money that you have spent, future money that you spent before you had it. And now you're carrying a balance and paying interest. But Thomas Jefferson was giving that advice over 200 years ago. Don't spend your money before you've earned it. If you can't buy it then, that means you can't afford it. You can't buy it then, that means you can't afford it. And you shouldn't buy it. Solid advice. And she said, Jefferson's words of wisdom, which he shared in letters to his children and grandchildren, are still applicable more than 2 centuries later. Failing to live within your means leads to debt and financial insecurity, as Jefferson himself proved. Let us continue with the founding fathers. Benjamin Franklin. We know about Benjamin Franklin, right? With the kite and the key, and then I've discovered electricity. Benjamin Franklin. Let's see what we can learn from Benjamin Franklin on the magic of compounding. We all know about Benjamin Franklin. He's on $100 bills, right? Everybody talking about Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. Ain't nothing going on but Benjamin Franklin. Franklin's on $100 bill. Benjamin Franklin on the magic of compounding. This is great. Written in 1748 from Advice to a Young Tradesman. Written by an old one. And this was in 1748. Over 200 years ago. Almost 300 years ago. And it says, quote, remember that money is of a prolific generating nature. I mean, it grows. Prolific generating nature. Money can beget money, and its offspring can beget more. And so on. 5 shillings turned, it's 6. Turned again, it's 7 and 3 pence. And so on, till it becomes £100. The more there is of it, the more it produces every turning. So that the profits rise quicker and quicker. What are they talking about? He's talking about compound interest. That's what he's talking about. Albert Einstein called it the 8th wonder of the world. Those who understand it, make it, and those who don't understand it, pay it. When you understand it, that's how you see your money compound in the stock market, in the S&P 500, in VOO. It compounds. If you don't understand it, then you pay it. That's what happens when your credit card's debt compound. You carry a balance, and that balance that you carries its own interest. So you buy a flat screen TV for $500, and then you carry a balance, and then that balance, you carry a balance, and then the interest on the 500 now carries its own interest. That's the other side where you're paying it if you don't understand it. But Benjamin Franklin was talking about this in 1748. Remember that money is of a prolific generating nature. A prolific generating nature. Its tendency to compound and grow if it's given enough time and put in the right investment vehicle with the right rate of return. These are great advice from the founding father. So happy President's Day to you. If you're enjoying the content, if you're learning and seeing that these principles are foundational, I talk about it. It's been talked about over 200 years ago. Foundational principles, and they don't change. And the reason why I believe a lot of us have had so much trouble with finances coming up is because we were going against foundational principles. You can't get wealthy living above your means. You can't get wealthy paying more in credit card interest than you're getting when you put your money in the bank. That's not going to work. That's going against foundational principles. But it's good to see here that these foundational principles are not new, and they've been around for a long time. People who lived over 200 years ago knew about it, and they practiced it. And they either saw the positive aspect of it or the negative aspect, as we'll see at some slide. Alexander Hamilton, right? You know, the famous Broadway musical that they made. Alexander Hamilton. Let's see what he talks about. Sin taxes. It is a singular advantage of taxes on articles of consumption that they contain in their own nature a security against excess. They prescribe their own limit, which cannot be exceeded without defeating the end purpose. That is an extension of the revenue. From the Federalist Papers, Federalist number 21. What he's talking about here is that the sin taxes are like taxes on things that are, quote unquote, sin, not good for you. So tax on alcohol, tax on cigarettes. And what he was saying that the higher the tax, people will say, well, this is prohibitively more expensive. I can't keep paying all this money for cigarettes because of the taxes. But now we know that there's an addictive chemical called nicotine in cigarettes. And even though it makes no sense to keep paying all this money for something that's going to destroy your health, people still do it. Let's continue to learn from the founding fathers. And in this case, a founding mother. Abigail Adams, she's the wife of John Adams. On the importance of education. Learning is not attained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor, meaning effort, and attended to with diligence. Letter to John Quincy Adams. Also, she must be the wife of John Quincy Adams. 1780. So what she's saying is that you learn your education, it's not by accident. It has to be sought for with ardor or effort and attended to with diligence. This is what we're talking about. You have to take responsibility for your financial education. We know that the government is not going to give it to you. You have to make an effort to say, I'm going to get this information so I can benefit from it and teach my children, right? So that it is not attained by chance. And I like what the author here says. She said, John Adams' 1787 letter to Jefferson would echo this point from this founding mother. If you really want to know about finances, you have to actively seek information and take the time to understand it. And as Abigail Adams wrote, it's not a one and done process. Education happens continually, and it's important to stay up to date and informed. That's what we talk about here on this channel, MD Investor. You have to take your financial education seriously. Let's look at what George Washington, that's the add to the conversation. We all know about George Washington. He's on a dollar bill, first president. George Washington on tracking your expenses. George Washington was a man of few words, but his actions and old Library of Congress records speak for themselves. Washington was a stickler about keeping track of his money. When he was appointed commander-in-chief of the Continental Army in 1775, he did not accept a salary. Instead, he agreed to reimbursement of his expenses after the war. Congress readily agreed to his request, and naturally he proceeded to record just about everything, from brooms to mutton to payment to his soldiers. Washington was a meticulous record keeper. Although some of his founding fellows died in debt, Washington went down in history as one of the richest men of his time. He kept good records. So this is pointing to knowing where your money goes. Okay? Knowing where your money goes. Benjamin Franklin, again, uncertainties. In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Right? People are talking about death and taxes, so I guess this is where it came from. From a 1789 letter to French scientist Jean-Baptiste Leroy. Or Jean-Baptiste Leroy. Right? Nothing can be certain except death and taxes. But even though death is certain, we know that taxes can be mitigated, right? Because it was Judge Learned Hand that said there are two tax systems, one for the rich and one for the poor. Both are legal, right? So when you learn that certain income are taxed differently, then you can learn how to arrange your affairs, okay? Marquis de Lafayette on careful deliberation. I read, I study, I examine, I listen, I think, and out of all that, I try to form an idea into which I put as much common sense as I can. From a letter to his father in 1776, Marquis de Lafayette. Right? Good advice. Careful deliberation, right? We know that there's something called analysis paralysis, where you can study so much, and you know the ins and outs, the pros and cons, but you never take action. But here, I believe he's just talking about, ponder a thing, think about it, meditate on something, think about a problem, think about where you are, think about where you want to be. Right? I listened to something the other day where it said we spend so little time on thinking. Where a lot of us are just in action mode, and you're doing, not realizing that the very action you're doing is what's exacerbating the problem. Stop, think. So I like that. I read, I study, I examine, I listen, I think. And out of all that, I try to form an idea into which I put as much common sense as I can. All right? We do that in investing. We read and we study. You're watching the YouTube, you're watching the MD Investor to try to increase your financial IQ, right? So that's what we're doing. Then, but we definitely take action. Right? We don't stop there. We take action. John Hancock. On having and not having money. Most of the time when we talk about John Hancock, we know about his signature. Put your John Hancock here. I find money some way or other goes very fast. But I think I can reflect it has been spent with satisfaction and to my own honor. From letter to his uncle in 1761. John Hancock. John Hancock might be remembered for his iconic signature today, but he also knew a thing or two about money. He inherited a hugely successful mercantile business from his uncle, making him one of the wealthiest men in the American colonies. In 2007, Forbes magazine estimated his net worth in today's dollars was around $19.3 billion. Yet he still understood how quickly a fortune could disappear without wise budgeting and planning. No matter how big your fortune is, without wise budgeting or planning, it can disappear. We see that all too often with famous athletes and entertainers, right? Because they have large incomes for a short period of time and they continue to spend, and they don't ever arrange their affairs with investments. So that's good to know that someone who inherited such a large fortune still was keeping his eye on his money and make sure the foundational principles still had to be honored. Jefferson on living within your means. But I know nothing more important to inculcate into the minds of young people than the wisdom, the honor, and the blessed comfort of living within their income. To calculate in good time how much less pain will cost them the plainest style of living which keeps them out of debt, than after a few years of splendor above their income to have their property taken away for debt when they have a family grown up to maintain and provide for. From a letter to his daughter, Martha Jefferson Randolph, in 1808. He said, live within your means. That was over 200 years ago. He said, live within your means. If you live too high in the hog and you go in debt, it's going to be very risky, right? You may eventually lose your house. You may eventually lose all your kids' inheritance because you're living above your means. Okay? That's held true then, and it still holds true now. People are getting in trouble because they're living above their means. Jefferson knew what he was talking about. He not only inherited debt from his father-in-law, he also lived way beyond his means. When he died, it's estimated he still owed about $107,000, estimated to be about $2.6 million in today's dollars. Okay? So it was true then, and it is true now. Live beneath your means. Back to Ben Franklin on enjoying the wealth you earn. Wealth is not his that has it, but his that enjoys it. From Franklin's book, Poor Richard's Almanac, 1736. Yes, so we have to enjoy it too, right? The whole purpose of building wealth is to, yes, to have freedom and to enjoy it, but to have your assets provide so you're not working for it. And that's what he's saying here. You have to enjoy some of it as well. So, this is Sarah Smith, okay? She's a senior majoring in international relations and gender, sexual, and women's studies at the College of Women and Mary, right? She's the editor of the Flat Hat, the Williams and Mary's student newspaper. Like I said, I just gave him Kiplinger.com. I get a lot of great ideas from Kiplinger.com. Just remember, on this President's Day, remember that the foundational thing that we're teaching here on the MD Investor, living beneath your means, taking your cash flow and buying assets, compound interest, staying out of debt. These are foundational principles that were true 200 years ago, over 200 years ago in the colonial time, and they're still true now. I'd appreciate a like, a subscription, a thumbs up, and if you think there's people out there who could benefit from this type of financial information, let them know. And I will see you on the next one. And until next time, continue to command your money to grow. MD Investor out.